Welcome to another exciting message from America's pace-setting life coach, Dr. Dave Williams. After more than 30 years of leading a flourishing church and overseeing the establishment of over 500 growing daughter churches in America, Africa, and Asia, he has the first-hand experience that will help you succeed and be fruitful in your life's calling, whether in ministry or marketplace. Dave Williams is a teacher, coach, and trainer to successful pace-setting leaders. And now, here's Dr. Dave Williams.
This is the earth-shaking,
things that can sabotage your life. Self-sabotage is what makes a person a serial loser. Self-sabotage, the inner monster, your own subversion, unconscious sabotage is what we've been talking about. In his book, Fuzzy Memories, Jack Handy writes, "There used to be this bully who would demand my lunch money every day. Since I was smaller, I would give it to him. Then I decided to fight back. I started taking karate lessons, but then the karate lesson guy said I had to start paying him $5 a lesson, so I just went back to paying the bully." Too many people feel like it's easier to pay the bully than to learn how to defeat him. And too many people feel like the cost is too much to come out of this self-subvertive condition called self-sabotage. You see, there's a difference between victims and victors, victims and champions. It's all to do with the mindset. They see things differently. They frame things differently. When Winston Churchill was asked what was the most important thing that prepared him to lead Great Britain through World War II, he responded, "It was the time I repeated a class in grade school." The questioner asked, "You mean you flunked a grade?" Churchill said, "I never flunked in my life. I was given a second opportunity to get it right." See, winners always frame things differently. And victims always frame things in the worst possible way, and that is the self-sabotage spike, dagger I want to talk to you about today, the thing that destroys people's lives. One of the things, among the other 17 we've already talked about, is a victim mentality. A victim mentality. I have two there, victim and entitlement mentalities, but I realized at 8 o'clock I never got to the entitlement mentality. Because this victim mentality is so important. All of us have slipped into it from time to time. But when it becomes a life pattern and an attitude, a habitual pattern of thinking, self-sabotage is just ahead. Damage is just ahead. Now, I selected two champions, one from the New Testament and one from the Old Testament, that could have been victims but chose to be victors. Because I believe there was only one real victim ever born, and that was Jesus Christ. He was victimized, lied about, executed, even though innocent. And when he rose from the dead the third day, he didn't immediately go back and say, "Okay, you chief priests, you set me up. Now I'm back and I'm going to get even with you." He didn't go to Pontius Pilate and say, "All right, you had me crucified. You knew I was innocent. Now I'm going to sue you." He was a victim, but he got victory to make all of us victors. But Paul in 2 Corinthians could have been a victim if he wanted to be. 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 7 to 10 in the Message. Because of the extravagance of those revelations, and so I wouldn't get a big head, I was given the gift of a handicap to keep me in constant touch with my limitations. Now he explains what that handicap was, or that thorn in the flesh, as it says in King James. Satan's angel, that is a demon, did his best to get me down. What he in fact did was push me to my knees. Paul reframed the situation. Okay, something bad is happening. This demon was going from town to town, lying about Paul, stirring up trouble everywhere he went. So Paul turned it around. He said, he thought he was going to get me down, but instead he drove me to my knees. No danger then of walking around high and mighty. At first I didn't think of it as a gift, and we never do, and begged God to remove it. 3 times I did that, and then he told me, my grace is enough. It's all you need. My strength comes into its own in your weakness. Once I heard that, I was glad to let it happen. I quit focusing on the handicap and began appreciating the gift. It was a case of Christ's strength moving in on my weakness. Now I take limitations in stride, and with good cheer. These limitations that cut me down to size, abuse, accidents, opposition, bad breaks, I just let Christ take over. And so the weaker I get, the stronger I become. Now, here was a guy that could have been a classic candidate for a victim mentality. Instead, every bad thing, he turned it around and let it propel him forward. David, King David, the man after God's own heart, in Psalms. Let's read it. Psalm 18. I love you, Lord. You are my strength. The Lord is my rock, my fortress, and my Savior. My God is my rock, in whom I find protection. He is my shield, the power that saves me, and my place of safety. I called on the Lord, who is worthy of praise, and he saved me from my enemies. Now listen to this. The ropes of death entangled me. Floods of destruction swept over me. The grave wrapped its ropes around me. Death laid a trap in my path. But in my distress, I cried out to the Lord. I let these bad things propel me. Yes, I prayed to my God for help. He heard me from his sanctuary. My cry to him reached his ears. And the Contemporary English Version says, you heard me and answered my prayer. Somebody ruined my life. Have you ever heard statements like that? Somebody ruined my life. If it hadn't been for this somebody, I'd really be on the road to success now. I remember back in the 60s, there was a singer. He sang with a lot of really big bands. Finally, he made a hit single all of his own. It became a huge icon in the hippie movement, in the peace movement. He was popular, #1 record for many weeks. And then you didn't hear much about him in the 70s, and he apparently accepted Christ in the late 70s and started appearing on a lot of the Christian variety shows when they had the shows like PTL that would, have singers come on, and usually somebody of significant renown. And he came on, but now he was doing Christian music. And he was on there time and time and time again. And then the PTL scandal and everything fell apart, and you didn't hear from this singer. Well, I was out to an ICBM conference in Tulsa, and there's an outlet store I like to go to when I'm there. But I went in the outlet store, and when I came out, there were tracks on everybody's windshield. And I thought probably some zealous Christian was putting tracks on windshields. So I took my track off, and I remember sitting in my car and reading it. It was written by this singer. And he told how the fall of PTL ruined his life, destroyed his ministry. He should have never been on PTL. And then he said, so I was down and out, and I went to Pat Robertson and asked if I could be on the 700 Club, and they turned me down. And I came to Tulsa and asked Oral Roberts Ministries if I could work for them, and they turned me down. What kind of Christian love are these people? Do these people have? Just complaining about somebody done me wrong. And my respect for that singer went to the basement. I've had no respect for him since because he took on what we call a victim mentality. I'm going to give you signs of a victim mentality because champions turn mourning into dancing. Victims turn dancing into mourning. Champions know how to turn sorrow into joy. Victims always take a joyous situation and try to interject some sorrow. Champions take lemons and turn them into lemonade. Victims take lemonade poured on themselves and then blame the people that made the lemonade and sue them. You buy a lottery ticket and you lose, it's because the whole thing is rigged against you. You have a relationship breakup, it's not your fault. Not one little bit, it was all the other person. You lose a job, it's not because you spent half a day playing games on the computer, 2-hour lunch breaks and 45-minute coffee breaks. It's because Mr. Jones is out to get you. Paul could have been a victim, but he decided to be a victor. David could have been a victim, but he decided to be a victor. And let me tell you, the air smells better when you're a victor. The sky's bluer, the grass is greener, and the water's wetter. What do I mean by victim mentality? And in a moment, I'm going to have somebody come out and play you the theme song of the person with a victim mentality. The word victim actually means prey. Prey means, that you have somebody chasing you all the time. If you're a cat, you're prey to the dog. If you're a mouse, you're prey to the cat. In other words, you see yourself as always being chased. Somebody's always out to get you. Roget's thesaurus gives some synonyms. Bottom dog, casualty, clown, fatality, fool, hireling, stooge, sucker, turkey. It's actually there in Roget's thesaurus. So the next time somebody says, so-and-so just ruined my life, remember, they're confessing to be a bottom dog, casualty, clown, fatality, fool, hireling, stooge, sucker, turkey. Mentality is a mindset. It's a habitual or characteristic mental attitude that determines how we interpret and respond to situations. It relates to character, disposition, intelligence, rationality, and our sense. Well, I want to share with you 20 facts about the victim mentality, but first, I want to share with you the victim's theme song. If I could have my friend come out, and here they are now. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the B.J. Thomas Group, all the way from California to be with us this morning to sing the victim's theme song.
It's lonely out tonight, and the feeling just got right for a brand new love song. Somebody done somebody wrong song. Hey, won't you play another somebody done somebody wrong song? Make me feel at home while I miss my baby, while I miss my baby. So play for me a sad melody, so sad that it makes everybody cry. A real hurting song about a love that's gone wrong, 'cause I don't want to cry all alone. Hey, won't you play another somebody done somebody wrong song, and make me feel at home while I miss my baby, while I miss my baby. So play for me a sad melody, so sad that it makes everybody cry. A real hurting song about a love that's gone wrong. 'Cause I don't want to cry all alone. Hey, won't you play another somebody done somebody wrong song and make me feel at home while I miss my baby, while I miss my baby. Won't you play another somebody done somebody wrong song and make me feel at home while I miss my baby, while I miss my baby. Won't you play another somebody done somebody wrong song and make me feel at home while I miss my baby, while I miss my baby.
Thank you, Brian and team. Another Somebody Done Me Wrong song. I want to talk to you about 20 signs of a victim mentality. Number one, they blame. A victim blames others for their circumstances. When something happens, they don't take responsibility for their actions. Somebody in the past, somebody in the present. It doesn't matter. When bad things happen to them, it's always somebody else's fault. A victim mentality is one where it's always somebody else's fault for the bad things that happen in their world. Ahab was the poorest excuse of a king that ever lived. In fact, I believe he was the poorest excuse of a man that ever lived. The Bible said nobody had ever been so sold out to the devil as Ahab. And he was one with a victim mentality. He led the nation into sin. God withheld the rain, so he blamed the prophet. He couldn't say, why don't we repent and get God on our side? He blamed the prophet. When really, if he'd have led the nation into repentance, God would have sent rain. So they blame. Number two, they recruit. Those who have a victim mentality are always trying to recruit others to share the victim mentality. But evil is never overcome by more evil or by playing into the power and victim games that others use to try to ensnare us and entrap us and eventually enslave us with that same kind of mentality. Wise people who are close to God, staying straight with Jesus, are never sucked in to the whirlpool of the victim's self-destructive attitude and dehumanizing behavior. Only foolish and emotionally and spiritually weak people are drawn in. That's why we refuse to participate in a victim's cycle of self-demeaning, self-dehumanizing behavior. So one, they blame. Two, they recruit. Three, they shame. They are forever speaking evil of the one they blame for their failure. Mr. Jones fired me, not because they will never tell you that they were playing computer games for 7 out of the 8 hours a day, but Mr. Jones ruined my life. They are always speaking evil of persons, organizations, and systems that did them wrong. Number four, they accept no responsibility for their lives or their position in life. Now, I have to say, all of us slip in to the potential victim mentality from time to time. But when it becomes a way of life, a standard way of thinking, destruction is just ahead. If they don't get the promotion, they don't accept responsibility for not getting the promotion. It's because the boss has it out for them. They don't tell you that they're behind the boss's back, criticizing him constantly, hurting morale of the company, but the boss is out to get them. That's why I didn't get the promotion. They accept no responsibility. Number 5, they make excuses. And you can be sure the excuses never point in their direction. It's always somebody else. And number 6, they're typically unteachable. They don't admit their own weaknesses, but they delight in others' weaknesses. They'll talk about the boss's weakness. They'll say, now here's where the boss is wrong. Here's where the boss is handling this wrong. But they will never admit their own weaknesses. In fact, it gives them a rush to think that somebody they blame for something bad in their life is going through a difficult time. They'll even go out of their way to rub it in their nose. Number 7, they create obstacles for themselves. Things that could be stepping stones, they turn into roadblocks. The victim mentality, every time something comes in their path, instead of seeing it as a stepping stone, they see it as a roadblock. I told the story before about the farmer's donkey that fell into the well. The animal cried for hours. The farmer tried to figure out what to do. And finally he decided, the donkey's old and he's not much use anyway, and that well is no longer producing any water. We'll just fill in the well with him down there, and that'll take care of 2 things. We've needed to fill that well in. So he called his neighbors, and they started shoveling dirt down the well, and the donkey cried for a while, and then all of a sudden they didn't hear anything, and they just kept shoveling dirt down into the well. To their surprise, the donkey hopped out of the well. You see what the donkey did, every time a dirt pile came on him, at first he was crying about the dirt. But then he got an idea. He'd just shake the dirt off and step on it, take him up a level higher. He'd shake the dirt off, step on it, it'd take him up a level higher until he was able to hop out of the well. And the moral is this: life is always going to shovel dirt on you. It's real dirt, imagined dirt. Life will shovel dirt on you. It's a fact of life. And the trick is to shake it off and use it as a stepping stone to get out of the well. And that's what champions do. That's what victims don't do. They whine about the dirt. Champions take the dirt, shake it off, and use it as a stepping stone. Number 8, they enjoy people having pity on them. That's why they recruit people to their victims group. Number 9, they believe they have special rights that the world owes them, and they're angry when the world doesn't deliver the way they think the world should deliver. They have a dream, and they expect somebody else to make their dream come true while they lay around in the hammock and do nothing. Number 10, they feel strongly about the way things should be done for them. When things aren't done to their satisfaction, it wasn't handled right. Number 11, they're whiners. And here's a news bulletin. Whiners and winners are never the same person. Number 12, they're often bound by unforgiveness. According to Corrie ten Boom, she said, forgiveness is setting the prisoner free only to find out that the prisoner was me. When a person holds unforgiveness, they become the prisoner. Number 13, the victim has surrendered power over his life to others. In other words, if somebody else ruined my life, it's because I gave them the power to ruin my life. Viktor Frankl survived the Nazi death camp at Auschwitz by discovering the ultimate freedom. He said to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances is to choose one's own way. Stephen Covey, in his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, describes the ability to choose our responses as the first habit of being proactive. Champions' lives are driven by values they employ in knowing how to respond to anything that comes their way. Peter Drucker discusses in reference to number 14, the victim's focus is always on me. And Peter Drucker, who was the great management guru who became a Christian later in life, discussing the effective executive, he said, the winner's focus is not what can I get, but rather what can I contribute. A person with a victim mentality, it's always what I didn't get, what I should have gotten, what I don't have, what somebody else has. It's never on what I should be contributing, what I should do as my part. It's always what should be done for me. Number 15, they pursue justification and vindication rather than pursuing God. Whenever we're pursuing justification for whatever happened, whether we lost a relationship or lost a job, if we've lost in some way, whenever we try to justify, whenever we try to vindicate ourselves, we have ceased pursuing God. They pursue justification and vindication rather than pursuing God. Number 16, they live in a cycle of self-demeaning attitudes and dehumanizing behavior. Number 17, they like to remain a victim because of all the attention they can get. They can't seem to be noticed through legitimate means like developing their skills or developing their talents or hard work, so instead they play the victim game. Number 18, they're never successful leaders, but it's not their fault. Number 19, they tend to see the control and responsibility for all their life situations as belonging to somebody else. I gave an illustration years ago, and the psychologists in our church get upset with me. But that's okay. They know I love them, and I do believe in counseling, and I do believe that we have a mind, and sometimes the mind needs healing. It's not a spiritual matter that I can help with or a physical matter that a doctor can help with. That you need a good Christian Bible-based psychologist to help you out. But I use the example of this when we believe everything that is in our lives is somebody else's responsibility to do about, is like a 23-year-old girl that sat on a tack, a 1-inch tack, and went in her bottom when she was 17 years old, and she's been griping about the tack ever since. She goes to the counselor and says, yes, back when I was 17, I sat on a tack, and it penetrated my buttocks. How do you feel about that tack being in your buttocks? Well, it's painful. Well, let's go back to the time you sat on that tack. And I'm looking for this psychologist to relieve me of my pain, but I'm not willing to pull the tack out and let it heal. You know what I'm talking about? They come to a preacher like me, Pastor Dave, I sat on a tack back when I was 17 years old. I'd say, stupid, take the tack out, let it heal. But I think there might be some infection in there. You know, it's always one thing after another. Pastor Dave, it's your responsibility to get me healed of this tack in my bottom, but you're not willing to pull the tack out. Well, I'm not going to pull it out. My problem is always somebody else's responsibility. And this is why so many pastors leave the pastorate. 37 out of 40 pastors end up leaving. 37 out of 40. Why? Because these people with victim mentality expect the pastor to solve all their problems. And when he can't, they go out and say, well, he prayed for me, but nothing happened. I didn't think it would anyway. You know, he just doesn't have the power. No, you better take the tack out. I'll pray for your healing, but you better pull the tack out. You know, there's a book out by Kate McVeigh. It's called Just Get Over It. You know what? There comes a point in time where you just got to get over it and get on with your life. I was going through my mom counseled me one time. My mom is anything but a victim. She's one of the greatest victors I know. Just growing up, in just a short period of time, the grandpa that she really loved, almost raised her, died. Then her brother died. Then her dad died. Then her husband, my dad, died. One thing after another. That would drive you crazy. And she said, I just had to pull myself up by the bootstraps. And one bad thing after another happening over and over again, and surviving breast cancer a few years ago. One thing after another. But you know what? She doesn't say, well, this was Lila's fault. She prayed for me and nothing happened. No, here she is sitting in church, member of the 50-plussers. Do you see what I'm saying? My problems are not somebody else's responsibility. I can lean on somebody for encouragement and help in prayer, but I can't expect them to pull the tack out of my bottom. That's up to me to pull the tack out, let it heal, and you know what? Maybe it'll be all right. And there is something to be said about choices. You can choose to take the tack out. You can choose to leave it in. Victims tend to see the control and responsibility for their situation belonging to someone else. Number 20, a victim mentality, this is the worst part, is basically rebellion. Jesus was the victim for you, so you and I don't have to be victims. And to have a victim mentality is rebellion against God, and it is an automatic withdrawal from God's leadership training. Whenever we develop a consistent, persistent victim mentality, we're saying, God, I don't want you training me for leadership. Now, there are some keys to avoiding this horrible, nauseating mentality called the victim mentality. And number one is, first key, admit our weaknesses. That's what Paul did. He confessed his weakness so that he might possess God's strength. This is the first step to being saved. If you want to go to heaven, you got to admit that you've sinned. You've looked at a woman with lust, or you've looked at a man with lust, or you've been greedy, or you've stolen something, or you've gossiped, or you've lied. You've sinned. And here's what God said, all have sinned and come short of the standard of God, the glory of God. All have sinned. And if you say you have no sin, then what you're doing is you're thumbing your nose at God and saying, God, you're a liar. I have no sin. I prayed with a guy, and the guy called me. I'd known him for many, many years. He was a case. He called me and he says, I need help. My marriage is falling apart. I'm losing my family. Everything's going wrong. And I said, well, it's the same thing as I told you for years. You need the Savior. You need Jesus to come into your life, and He can begin to untangle the messes that the devil has brought to your life and that you have made by your own choices. I said, are you ready to pray? And he said, yeah. And I said, okay, I want you to tell God just what you're thinking right now, and then I'm going to pray the prayer of salvation with you. And he said, oh, God, I want you to know I haven't been all that bad. I said, stop! I said, when you pray, you got to be honest with God, because He knows it anyway. He said, oh God, I ain't worth a... What do they call it? Expletive? Expletive. And I said, now God heard that prayer, swear word and all. Because at least you were being honest with God. You were confessing something. You see, when we admit our weak, Paul said, when I admitted my weakness, I took on the strength of God. Now, if Paul said, I'm strong enough to fight this myself, he wouldn't have got the strength of God. The first key to avoiding a victim mentality is to admit our weaknesses and limitations so that we can possess the strength of God. Number two, the second key is to start taking responsibility for every action and every circumstance in life, including I am responsible for my future. I am responsible for my future. And the third key is this. It's the direct pursuit of God Himself. David not only admits his weakness and accepts responsibility, he pursues God. After the confession, There must be the pursuit. The pursuit not of the enemy, not of vindication, not of justification, but the pursuit of God. When we pursue God, God will pursue our enemies. So David, as a deer panteth after the water, he started running hard toward God. He said, in my distress, I cried out to the Lord. That is, I pursued him. I wouldn't stop. And the word pursue means to go after with every intention of overtaking whatever it is you're after. He wasn't called to pursue the enemy. He was called to pursue God. And every time Israel pursued God before facing an enemy, they came out victorious. But when they pursued the enemy without pursuing God, they came into tragedy and disaster. You will always find as you move toward God, God will move toward you. Key number 4 is we must embrace this attitude. This was an attitude Paul embraced. Although I cannot control my circumstances, I can always control my response. If you look at 2 concentric circles, a big circle and a circle in the middle. The circle in the middle represents things you can control, things you influence and control. The things in the outer circle are the things you have no control over. Winners focus on the inner circle, the things they do have influence over and control. That's where champions live. Victims live in the other circle, always concerned and talking about the things they can't control. Somebody done me wrong. Somebody did this to me. Somebody did that. It's out of your control. What are you going to do about it? You're going to live in that out of control circle. Or you can move into the circle where you can control and let that outer circle just begin to deteriorate, just begin to shrink. That's what champions do. But those with a victim mentality, those that have been led down the road to becoming a loser, focus on the things they can't control. Whine over the things they can't control. You can't control somebody that hates you. You don't even know why somebody hates you sometimes. You have no clue why they hate you. There is nothing you can do to control that person. All you can do is pursue God. And if God gives you a suggestion or a command, you can obey it. But you can't control. I can't control whether people go to heaven or hell. Everybody has a free will. I want to see everybody I preach to go to heaven. And the only way to heaven is through Jesus Christ, God said. I want to see everybody go to heaven, but the fact is there are some people that will thumb their noses at me. I begged this elderly man to come to Christ one Sunday night. I left the pulpit and walked over, and I told him how much God loved him, and he just swore at me. The next week I got a call from Gorsline Runciman, wanted me to do a funeral. And I went down to the funeral home, looked in the casket, and there was the man I was begging to come to Christ. And he just swore at me. I had no control over his decision. I had no control over his destiny. And that's frustrating, but I can't live there. I can only live in the area that I can influence and control. Otherwise, I become a victim. And victims become losers 100% of the time. We have the choice to get over it and go on, or to stay there and rot. And the 5th key is stop needing and start leading. You know what I mean? There are people that think the whole world is out to meet is just designed to meet their needs. Well, we want to meet your needs, your spiritual needs here. And I found that, some people are never happy with anything. They'll come and say, I'm hungry. And you give them a meal coupon to Bob Evans. They say, I don't want that. I want cash so I can eat where I want to eat. Oh, well, you don't like Bob Evans? Well, here's one to Cracker Barrel. Well, I don't like Cracker Barrel either. Well, you know what they really want the cash for? You know what their meal is going to be? It's going to be in a brown paper bag. It's going to have a neck on it. I just refuse to support that kind of dehumanizing behavior. There comes a time you got to stop needing and start leading. And God's given you opportunity after opportunity to say, look, stop being a needer and start being a leader. We're all going to always have needs, but I'm talking about the perpetual needy. And some of them are wealthy, but they're perpetually needy. Well, I need Harvey to do this for me. Why don't you pick up and start leading? I was reading about some folks down in Florida at one of the, kind of like a nursing home, it's a retirement center, but these folks were in their 80s and 90s. And this one lady, she said, I'm just going to try to be a leader of these people. And they were getting together for coffee one day, and one of them said, my arms are so weak I can hardly lift this cup of coffee. Another one says, well, I know what you're talking about because my cataracts are so bad I can't hardly even see the coffee. Another one says, you think that's bad? He said, the arthritis is so bad in my neck I can barely turn to see the coffee pot. Another one nodded weakly and says, well, I can't even drink coffee. My blood pressure is so high, and the pills they've got me on just make me dizzy. Another old guy looked up and said, well, I guess that's the price we pay for getting old. Short moment of silence ensued, and this lady, who was determined to be a leader, instead of a needer, she said, well, it's not that bad. Thank God we can all still drive. Life is filled with choices. Are you going to confess your weakness so you can take on God's strength? Are you going to take responsibility for every action in your life? Even if we go to hell, it was our responsibility because God gave us the offer of a free gift of salvation through His Son Jesus. If we would just confess our sins and turn to Christ and pursue God and embrace the attitude, I may not be able to control all the circumstances in my life, but I can control my response, and determine to stop needing and start leading. Amen.
We hope you enjoyed this message. For more information about Dr. Dave Williams or to access the latest resources, please visit www.davewilliams.com. And now, for the entire Dave Williams ministry team, may God bless you richly.
This is the earth shaking